Have you ever looked at the person you married and realized you were staring at a complete stranger? My story doesn't begin with a bang, but with silence. The silence of 12 unanswered calls on a stormy night. He left me stranded and soaking on the street. But that wasn't the worst thing he did. It wasn't even close. My name is Alara. I'm 32 years old, and I am standing under the flimsy awning of a closed bookstore on Pearl Street, watching the rain turn Boulder into a blurry watercolor of neon and asphalt. It's nearly midnight. I am not just damp, I am drenched. My hair is plastered to my skull, and the silk blouse I wore for the presentation is now a cold, transparent second skin. Tonight was the annual Urban Reforest Gala. As the project lead, I'd spent the last 6 months pouring every spare ounce of energy into this fundraiser. Tonight, we had secured funding for the next 2 years. I should have been celebrating, riding high on the success. Instead, I was shivering, watching the gutter overflow. My old Honda sat useless in the event parking lot 3 blocks away. The battery was completely, stubbornly dead. I had called my husband, Marcus, 12 times. The first call, at 11:05, was optimistic. He was probably just wrapping up a meeting. The fourth call, at 11:20, was laced with irritation. The 8th was frantic. The 12th, just 2 minutes ago, went straight to voicemail. He had turned his phone off, or the battery had died, but I knew he hadn't. I looked at my own phone, the screen slick with rain despite my attempts to shield it. My last text message, sent at 10:51, "Car's dead, raining hard, where are you?" Beneath it, the 2 words that felt like a slap. Read 10:45 p.m. He saw it. He read it over an hour ago. He knew I was waiting. He knew I was stranded. And he did nothing. He had promised. This morning, as I was pinning up my hair, he'd kissed my shoulder, his voice a low rumble. "I'll be there by 10:30. Alara, we'll celebrate your big tree-saving win." The sarcasm was subtle, a fine poison I'd learned to ignore. He always belittled my work at the nonprofit. He, the high-flying executive at Nexus Solutions, couldn't understand why I'd waste my time on charity when I could be contributing to our future. Our future, as defined by him. A gust of wind drove the rain sideways, forcing me to press my back flat against the cold brick of the bookstore. The chill was penetrating, finding its way into my teeth, making them ache, but it was nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the hollow, icy dread spreading from my stomach. This wasn't an oversight. This was a message. This wasn't the first time he'd forgotten. There was my birthday dinner last April, when he'd shown up 2 hours late, smelling of expensive whiskey and a perfume that wasn't mine. There were the countless weekends he'd canceled our plans for emergency projects at Nexus. I thought about the gulf that had opened between us, once a tiny crack, now a canyon. The late nights he claimed were spent buried in code. The dismissive wave of his hand whenever I questioned our finances, even though my name was on the joint accounts. "Don't worry your pretty head about it, Ilara," he'd say, patting my arm. "That's my burden." The condescension was suffocating. My phone vibrated, a weak, dying buzz. I fumbled with it, my fingers so cold they barely worked. The screen flashed a final, desperate warning: 2% battery. Panic, sharp and acidic, rose in my throat. I had one last chance. I tapped the rideshare app icon, my thumb sliding on the wet screen. The application struggled to open, the small loading circle spinning, spinning, spinning. It was trying to find my location, trying to find a car, trying to find a way out. Then the screen sputtered and went black. The silence was absolute. No calls, no texts, no way home. I was alone, in the dark, in the middle of a storm, with a husband who knew exactly where I was and had chosen to leave me there. Standing there, shivering against the brick, I felt a terrible sense of déjà vu. It was this same feeling of helplessness, of being utterly broken, that had brought Marcus into my life 5 years ago. My startup, The one I'd co-founded with my best friend, Ben, had just spectacularly imploded. We'd been full of ambition and terrible at cash flow, and it all came crashing down. I was drowning in debt, sleeping on my sister's couch, and my confidence was shattered into a million pieces. Then I met Marcus at a tech mixer I'd been dragged to. He was everything I wasn't. He was a rising star at Nexus Solutions, radiating an effortless confidence that mesmerized me. He listened to my story of failure not with pity, but with a kind of protective admiration. He made me feel seen, not for my failure, but for the effort. He was stable. He was secure. He was, I thought, my savior. He was the one who found the job posting at Urban Reforest. "This is perfect for you, Ilara," he'd said, rubbing my shoulders. "Low stress. Good people. You can do something that matters, without the pressure." When I hesitated, worried about the significant pay cut, he'd smiled that easy, reassuring smile. "Let me handle the earning, baby. You just be happy." And I was. For a while. His care was a warm blanket at first. He encouraged me to move in. He suggested we merge our finances. "It's just easier to manage." "Ilara," he reasoned. "One pot." I trusted him. It was only after we were married that the subtle shifts began. The investment accounts, where the bulk of our savings went, were suddenly restructured. When I asked for the new login details, he'd pat my head. "It's complex market stuff, honey. I look at it all day. You don't need that stress." He didn't just manage the money. He began managing me. My friends, especially Ben, were slowly edited out of my life. "He's just a bad influence." "Ilara," Marcus would say with a concerned sigh after any time I met Ben for coffee. "He's dragging you back to that failure. He doesn't respect what we're building." He always said we, but he meant he. His own life became a fortress of stress and secrets. The pressure at Nexus was relentless, he claimed. The competition was brutal. And there was always one name at the center of his complaints: Julian Vance. Julian Vance was trying to sabotage his projects. Julian Vance was stealing his ideas. Julian Vance was a shark, a backstabber, the villain of Marcus's corporate drama. The hatred he had for Julian was a constant simmering noise in our house. I looked down at my hands, now blue with cold. The rain was relentless. That safety he'd offered me wasn't a sanctuary. It was a gilded cage, meticulously designed and locked from the outside. He hadn't rescued me from my lowest point. He'd just found me there and built a dependency. The cold in my bones sharpened a memory from last week, the one I'd been trying to push away. It was the first time the bars of the cage had become truly visible. I'd been sorting through digital receipts for our taxes when I saw the alert from our joint savings account. A wire transfer. $50,000. Just gone. I waited for him to come home, the bank statement feeling toxic in my hand. "Marcus," I asked, my voice shaking just a little, "where did $50,000 go from the savings?" The man who turned to face me was not my husband. His easy smile vanished, replaced by a cold reptilian fury. His eyes went flat. "That," he said, his voice dangerously low, "was a mandatory investment for a work project." $50,000 without talking to me. He took a step toward me, and I instinctively flinched. "You are not allowed to interfere with my work," he hissed, his face inches from mine. "I handle the money. I handle the pressure. Your job is to plan your little tree events and stay out of my way." Do you understand me? I understood. Standing in the freezing rain, with a dead phone and a dead-end marriage, I finally understood everything. The awning was useless. The wind was a physical force, pushing the icy rain into my clothes until I felt like I was made of water. There was no choice. I couldn't stay here. Hypothermia was a real possibility, and the humiliation of my situation was giving way to a more primal fear. I pushed myself off the brick wall and stepped out from the pathetic shelter into the full force of the downpour. My teeth were chattering so hard my jaw ached. I wrapped my arms around myself, a useless gesture, and started walking toward the main road. Though I had no destination, each step was a squelch. My expensive heels, the ones Marcus had bought me, were ruined. I didn't care. I just needed to move. I was on the verge of tears, but the cold had frozen them inside me. I'd only made it half a block when the headlights appeared, slowing beside me. A long, sleek, black car. An Audi A8, the kind that cost more than my first apartment. It moved at my exact, pathetic pace, a predator stalking wounded prey. I kept my head down, trying to walk faster, my heart pounding a new rhythm of fear. The passenger window glided down with a faint, expensive hum. Alara. The voice was low, sharp, and utterly unexpected. I stopped, blinking rain from my lashes. I looked. He was sitting in the driver's seat, illuminated by the glow of the dashboard. Julian Vance, the boogeyman of our marriage. The shark Marcus was always fighting, the backstabber trying to ruin his career. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, and his eyes, as they took in my drowned rat appearance, held no pity. What I saw was a flash of something else cold, calculated astonishment. "Get in the car," he said. It wasn't a request. "You'll freeze to death out there." Every instinct screamed no. This was Marcus's mortal enemy. Getting in this car felt like a betrayal. But betraying what? Exactly. A husband who had left me here. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice trembling so badly I barely recognized it. Julian's gaze hardened. "No, you're not. Get in." The combination of my desperation and his absolute authority broke my paralysis. I was too cold, too tired, too broken to argue. I fumbled with the handle and fell into the passenger seat. The door closed with a heavy, sound-sealing thud. The sudden, profound silence was shocking. The world outside, the lashing rain, was gone, visible but inaudible. The inside of the car was warm. It smelled of rich leather and something clean, like ozone. I just sat there, dripping all over his pristine floor mat, shaking violently. Julian didn't speak. He pulled a lever, and a blast of hot air hit my legs. Then he reached over, unbuttoned his suit jacket, and shrugged it off. He didn't just hand it to me, he draped it over my shoulders. It was heavy, lined with silk, and radiated his body heat. I pulled it around me, the scent of him, the sheer warmth, making me want to weep. He put the car in gear and pulled smoothly away from the curb. The wipers moved in a silent, hypnotic rhythm. For several minutes, the only sound was the quiet swish of the tires on the wet road. "Where is he?" Julian asked finally. His voice was flat, cutting through the silence. "Marcus," I stalled, my mind racing. He's working late. My car battery died. My phone. It died too." "Where is he, Alara?" he repeated, not looking at me. "I told you, I couldn't reach him." The lie sounded pathetic, even to me. Julian let out a short, sharp sigh. He stopped at a red light, and the crimson glow filled the car, painting his angular features. He turned to look at me, and his eyes were devoid of any warmth. "Don't lie," he said. "You don't have to protect him. Not anymore." My breath hitched. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." The light turned green, and he accelerated. I saw him leave the Nexus Tower at 7 p.m. Sharp. My stomach turned to ice. 7 p.m. He had read my message at 10:45. He had been free for almost 4 hours. He must have had another meeting, I whispered. The defense automatic, reflexive. Julian almost smiled, but it was a cold, bitter expression. He did, just not an official one. He glanced at me, a quick, assessing look. He left with Valerie from Optima Dynamics. And they weren't going to a strategy session. They went to the Gilded Glass. I went rigid. The warmth from Julian's jacket suddenly felt suffocating, a heavy, foreign weight. The Gilded Glass. I knew the name. It was where corporate lawyers and tech executives made deals over absurdly expensive cocktails. Optima Dynamics, I repeated, the name tasting like ash. It was the one company Marcus truly seemed to hate, the rival he accused of stealing contracts, the enemy. He spent dinners ranting about their aggressive tactics. Who is Valerie? My voice was a thin, reedy sound, barely audible over the hum of the heater. She is their chief counsel, Julian said, his eyes fixed on the road. The shark at the head of their legal department, and she is the person Marcus has been meeting, in secret, for the last 6 months. 6 months. The emergency projects, the weekend deadlines, the stress that made him so distant and angry. It was all a lie. The blood drained from my face, and the shivering, which had briefly stopped, returned with a new violence. The cold was inside me now. Something inside me snapped. The pathetic, shivering victim disappeared, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I needed to see. I couldn't just sit in this car holding his enemy's coat. Take me there, I said. Julian glanced at me, his expression unreadable in the dark. He seemed to be weighing the cruelty of the request against the necessity of it. My voice, though trembling, was firm. Please, take me there now. He didn't argue. He didn't offer sympathy. He simply turned the Audi at the next intersection, heading downtown. The Gilded Glass was exactly as I'd pictured it all: dark wood, brass accents, and glass walls that looked out onto the rain-slicked street. It was designed to make the people inside feel insulated, superior, untouchable. Julian didn't park nearby. He pulled into a dark spot on the opposite side of the street, 2 buildings down, offering a perfect cinematic view through the bar's main picture window. He killed the engine, and the silence of the car was deafening. The only sound was the rhythmic squeak thud of the windshield wipers, slicing the rain. They're in the back, Julian said quietly, his voice neutral. My eyes scanned the warm cube of light, searching past the bar, past the casual drinkers. And then I saw them. They were in a semi-private booth, curved and plush, made for intimacy. The scene was a painting of betrayal. Valerie was sharp, elegant, with dark hair pulled back in a severe professional style. She was laughing, her head tilted back, and Marcus. My husband was a man I hadn't seen in years. He wasn't the tired, irritable man who stalked our house, complaining about Julian Vance and the pressure at Nexus. He was radiant. He was leaning forward, his eyes bright, his entire body focused on her. He was laughing a real, genuine laugh that reached his eyes, the laugh he used to use with me. His hand was on the table, covering hers. As I watched, he lifted her hand, turned it over, and pressed his lips to her palm. I made a sound, a small, strangled gasp. I was watching my marriage die, live, from across a rainy street. They raised their champagne glasses, toasting to something, to their success, to their future, to my stupidity. I should have told Julian to drive away then. I should have looked away. But I was frozen, mesmerized by the cruelty of it. They began to gather their things. Valerie slid out of the booth, smoothing her skirt. Marcus stood and helped her with her coat, a gesture of intimacy that felt like a punch, but they didn't leave. Marcus paused. He looked around the bar quickly, almost furtively. Then he reached into the breast pocket of his suit, the one I had picked up from the dry cleaners just last week. He pulled out a small, silver object. It was a USB drive. He didn't give it to her with a flourish. He slid it across the table. Valerie picked it up. She smiled. Not the warm laugh from before, but a sharp, satisfied smile of transaction. She didn't look at it. She just closed her hand around it and slipped it deep into her designer purse, like a jeweler pocketing a diamond. I stopped breathing. The numbers clicked into place in my head with the horrifying precision of a lock, the late nights, the endless, bitter complaints about Optima Dynamics, the $50,000, a mandatory investment. He had screamed. It wasn't an investment. It was a payment. It wasn't a rendezvous. It was a deal. This wasn't just an affair. This was corporate espionage. He was selling his company out, selling me out to the one person he'd sworn was his greatest enemy. And he'd used our money to do it. I watched them walk out of the bar. Marcus put his hand on the small of Valerie's back, a casual, proprietary gesture that made my stomach heave. They got into her car, a sleek, dark Tesla, and disappeared into the rain. I didn't cry. The capacity for tears felt like it had been surgically removed, leaving a hollow, echoing void. The shivering had stopped. I was just cold. An absolute, fundamental coldness that started in my marrow and radiated outward. Julian started the engine. The sound was a violent intrusion into the tomb-like silence of the car. He pulled away from the curb, not in the direction of my home, but deeper into the city. Where are we going? My voice was flat, a stranger's voice. You can't go home, he said, his eyes on the road. He might be there, or he might be on his way. You can't let him know you know. Not yet. He drove us to the Beaumont Hotel. The valet, trying not to stare at the half-drowned woman climbing out of a pristine Audi, took the keys. Julian put a hand on my elbow, not gently, but firmly, and steered me through the opulent lobby. He didn't check in. He had a key card. He must have a permanent suite. The room was on the 12th floor. It was vast, impersonal, and decorated in shades of gray and cream, with a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the storm-lashed city. It felt like a fortress. You can use the shower, he said, gesturing. There's a robe. I just stood on the expensive rug, dripping. Julian sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. He was pacing now, his own suit jacket still draped over my shoulders. I've suspected Marcus for months, he said, his voice tight with a controlled anger. Nexus has been leaking. Small things, proprietary data points, bidding strategies. Optima suddenly knew things they had no business knowing. I've been tracking the data flow. It all pointed to him, but I had no proof. He stopped and looked at me. But that USB drive, that wasn't a small leak. That's Project Aegis. It has to be. Aegis, I whispered, the word foreign. It's everything, Julian said, his voice dropping. It's the next 5 years of Nexus. It's our entire R&D platform. If Optima gets their hands on that, they won't just beat us. They will gut us. They'll own the market. And Marcus just handed it to their chief counsel. I sank into one of the cream-colored armchairs, the wet silk of my blouse clinging to my skin. I looked up at this man, my husband's sworn enemy, who was now my unwilling confidant. Why, I asked, why are you helping me? You hate him. You should be happy he's destroying himself. Julian stopped pacing and stood in front of me. His eyes were dark, and the corporate polish was gone, replaced by a raw, personal fury. I do hate him, he said, his voice low, but I hate traitors more. I hate parasites who feed off other people's work. He paused, and the final, devastating piece of the puzzle fell into place. He didn't just sell Nexus out. Alara, he sold me out. The foundation of Aegis, the core algorithm. It was mine. I developed it on my own time. He stole it from my personal drive over a year ago. He presented it to the board as his own, got the promotion, and built his entire reputation at Nexus on my work. The revelation was a physical blow. Marcus wasn't just a liar and a cheat. He was a fraud. His entire career, the one he lorded over me, the one that made my tree-saving job seem so pathetic, was built on a theft. As Julian's words hung in the air, a new thought, sharp and cold as an icicle, pierced through my numbness. It was a detail, a small, overlooked piece of our domestic life. His personal laptop, I said, interrupting Julian's train of thought. He frowned. What? He has a silver laptop, not his work machine from Nexus, a personal one. He never, ever takes it with him when he's working late. He told me it was for his private investments, the complex stuff I wouldn't understand. He keeps it in his home office, in the desk drawer. I looked up, and for the first time, my eyes met his with equal intensity. It's still there. He didn't take it tonight. A flicker of understanding passed over Julian's face. A smile, thin and cold and utterly devoid of humor, touched my lips. I know the password. I saw the question in his eyes and answered it. He always thought I was an idiot, a naive, emotional lightweight. He uses his mother's birthday, March 4th, 1965, the same password he uses for our wine club account. I stood up, pulling his heavy, warm jacket around me like armor. The numbness was gone. In its place was a vibrating, glacial adrenaline. I felt clean, focused. Take me home, I said. Right now. It was 3 a.m. The rain had finally subsided into a miserable, cold drizzle. Julian didn't pull up to the house. He parked at the end of the block, under the dark canopy of an oak tree, killing the engine and the lights. The street was dead silent. Are you sure you can do this? He asked, his voice low. I'm not the one who's going to have a problem, I said. I pulled his jacket off, handing it back to him. The cold air in the car instantly bit at my still damp clothes, but I didn't care. The adrenaline was a furnace. He left his keys in the kitchen bowl. Mine are in my purse, which is in my dead car. I need his. I'm not, Julian said, his voice flat. But you are. I'll take his key ring. He handed me a small, black external hard drive from the glove compartment. This is fast. Plug it in. Find his main user directory and copy everything. Don't pick and choose. Just take it all. I'll deal with sorting it. I nodded, the small, cold rectangle of metal heavy in my palm. I got out. The walk from the corner to my front door felt like a mile. I was a trespasser in my own life. Every shadow looked like a person. Every drip of water from the gutter sounded like a footstep. I slid my key into the lock, my hand shaking so badly I missed the keyhole twice. The click of the deadbolt retracting sounded like a gunshot in the silent night. I slipped inside. The house was dark, still, and suffocating. It smelled of him, his cologne, the stale coffee from this morning, the faint, metallic scent of his ambition. I didn't turn on a single light. I walked, silent as a ghost, past our living room, past the hallway, directly to his office. The door was closed. I opened it. His high-backed leather chair was a dark silhouette against the window. I went straight to the desk. The silver laptop was in the top right-hand drawer, just where he always kept it. I took it out, sat in his chair, and opened it. The screen lit up my face, demanding a password. My fingers hovered. His mother's birthday, 03041965. I hit enter. The screen unlocked. His desktop appeared, an image of a generic, sterile mountain range. You arrogant, stupid man, I whispered. I plugged in Julian's hard drive. The computer recognized it instantly. I opened the file explorer and started the copy. The drive began its work, a tiny blue light flickering. While it was pulling the raw data, I started to look. It was all there. A folder labeled Personal inside, a subfolder Val. It was full of them. Emails, chat logs, even photos. Not just sex, but promises. A new life. Just a few more months, and we're free of this town. He'd written her just last week. She'll be sad, but she'll get over it. She's not built for this anyway. Another folder, Nexus. Inside, Aegis transfer. My blood ran cold. It was the whole plan. The data handoff, the payment schedules, the technical specifications. The $50,000 I'd seen was just a good faith payment. I found the financial folder. Cayman. Statements. Wire transfers. He hadn't just taken the $50,000. He'd been siphoning money for a year. He'd liquidated stocks from our joint investment account. He'd maxed out a home equity line of credit I didn't even know he'd opened. It wasn't just his money he was moving. It was our money. My inheritance from my grandmother. Gone. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, all funneled into an offshore account under a holding company I didn't recognize. I felt sick. The copy was only at 40%. But then I saw it. A last folder, separate from the others. It was named Zurich Final. I clicked it. Encrypted. I tried his mother's birthday. Access denied. I tried Valerie's. I'd seen it in the emails. Access denied. I thought for a second, the rage clearing my head, his arrogance. He wouldn't use his own birthday. Too obvious. He'd use the day it all began, the day he stole Julian's work. I didn't know the date. Wait, I tried his own birthday. 121019888. Access denied. What else did he worship? The date he got his promotion at Nexus, 05172022. The folder opened, and I saw the real plan. He wasn't just double-crossing Nexus. He was double-crossing Optima. The files in the Zurich folder were a second set of negotiations. He was in talks with a private, rival investor in Switzerland. He was planning to sell Aegis to them for 5 times what Optima was paying him. Valerie and Optima were just his first-stage rocket. They were his diversion. His plan, laid out in a detailed memo, was to let the initial leak to Optima be discovered. And the evidence trail he'd fabricated one, a meticulously crafted breadcrumb trail of IP addresses, server logs, and financial transactions all leading directly, unequivocally, to Julian Vance. He was going to frame Julian for the Optima leak, crash the company's stock, and then, in the ensuing chaos, sell the real, uncorrupted Aegis code to the Zurich investor for millions. He and Valerie would be gone, and Julian would be left holding the bag for corporate treason, facing federal prison. The copy was finished. The blue light stopped blinking. I safely ejected the drive, my hand steady now. I closed the laptop. My eyes fell on the desk, on the heavy silver frame he'd bought last year. It was our wedding photo. Me, looking up at him, my smile so full of stupid, blind trust. Him, smiling at the camera, proprietary, proud. I slid the photo out of the frame. The thick, glossy paper was cold in my hands. I didn't look at it for long. I tore it, slowly, right down the middle, separating his face from mine. I laid the 2 pieces on top of the closed laptop, a simple, clear message. I walked out of the office, out of the house, and didn't look back. It was 4 a.m. We were back in the Beaumont, room 1201. The suite was silent save for the furious, quiet clicking of Julian's fingers on his laptop. The small black hard drive was plugged in, an external heart-pumping poison. The room service cart, ordered hours ago, sat untouched, the coffee cold. "It's worse than I thought," Julian said, his voice a low growl. He wasn't talking to me, he was talking to the screen. He's been faking data corruption in my server backups for 6 months to cover his own tracks. The man is methodical. I was not methodical. I was a singularity, my entire universe of feeling the grief, the humiliation, the love I'd once had collapsed into a single, dense point of cold rage. I was not a wife. I was not a victim. I was an instrument of his destruction. I picked up the heavy, cream-colored hotel phone and dialed a number I'd memorized from a magazine feature about the city's most powerful women. The phone rang 3 times before a voice, thick with sleep but sharp as glass, answered. "Ruiz." "My name is Alara," I said, my voice perfectly level. "I am calling you at 4 a.m. because I need you at your office at 7. I need an emergency asset freeze filed at the second the courthouse opens. My husband, Marcus, has liquidated over $300,000 of joint assets and moved them to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I am sending you the account numbers and wire transfer receipts right now." There was a pause, not of shock, but of calculation. "Who is your husband?" Anna Ruiz asked. "He's a senior executive at Nexus Solutions." "He'll be well represented." "Not as well as I am," I said. "I also have proof of criminal conspiracy to commit corporate espionage, which I believe gives us significant leverage." The sleep was gone from her voice. "I will be at my office at 6:30. Send the files to my private email." She hung up. I put the phone down. Julian looked at me with a new, grudging respect. He picked up the receiver the moment my hand left it. He dialed one number from memory. "Mrs. Harding." "Yes, it is. I apologize for the hour, but you need to hear this from me before the markets open. I am in possession of definitive proof of corporate treason. Marcus. Yes. He has sold Project Aegis to Optima Dynamics. But that was only phase 1. He's also framing me for the leak and is in the final stages of selling the uncorrupted source code to a private investor in Zurich for a multi-million-dollar payout. Yes, ma'am. I have the drive. I am sitting next to his wife. I will be at the office at 7 a.m. You'll need to have corporate security and the legal team meet me in the lobby. And, Mrs. Harding, we need to call the FBI." He hung up. The 2 calls had taken less than 5 minutes. The 2 most powerful forces in my husband's life, his career and his money, were now set on a collision course. While Julian was making a copy of the drive, my eyes scanned the chat logs between Marcus and Valerie. It was more of the same. Plans for their future, contempt for their past. And then I saw it. A chain from last week. The night of the $50,000 argument. "Valerie. Is she going to be a problem? 50K is a lot to just disappear." Marcus. "Don't worry about Alara. She's too busy trying to save the planet with her little non-profit to ever notice. She's pathologically naive. She thinks my pressure at work is because of Julian. It's almost pathetic. Pathetic." The word echoed in the void. He had used my passion as a blindfold. He had used my trust as a weapon against me. The ice in my veins turned to diamond. "He's asleep," I said, my voice quiet. Julian looked up. "He's at home, sleeping in our bed, thinking he's won." I looked at the hotel phone. "He'll be at Nexus at 7 a.m. for his meeting with Harding. He'll walk in thinking he's a king. He needs to be off balance. He needs to panic." "What are you doing?" Julian asked as I picked up the phone. I dialed our home number. It rang, thick and muffled. Once, twice, 3 times. He picked up, a groggy, furious sound. "What, Marcus?" I said. My voice was calm, cold, and clear. It was a voice he had never heard. There was a sudden, awake silence. "Alara. What the hell what time is it? Where are you?" "I'm at the Beaumont Hotel," I said, my voice as smooth as the silk robe hanging on the door. "Room 1201. It's quite lovely." "The Beaumont. What are you? Are you drunk? How did you get there?" "Julian Vance picked me up," I said. I let the name hang in the air. "You know, after you left me stranded in the rain, he was very kind." The silence on the line was now electric. I could hear his breathing. "And Marcus," I continued, "we've been having the most interesting conversation. We've been looking at your personal laptop, and we really need to talk about Aegis and about Zurich." I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't wait for the explosion, the lies, the threats. I simply pressed the receiver back into the cradle, cutting the connection. I looked at Julian. "He'll be here in 10 minutes. I knew that man. I knew his arrogance and his temper. He wasn't coming to apologize. He wasn't coming to get me. He was coming to stop me, to silence the one person who could bring his entire empire crashing down. He was coming to plug the leak. He didn't take 10 minutes. He took 25. Just long enough for Julian to leave, for me to shower in scalding hot water, and for me to be sitting at the desk, dressed in a thick hotel robe, sipping a fresh, scalding black coffee. It was 6:30 in the morning. The gray, watery light of dawn was just beginning to touch the clouds. There was no knock. The door to the suite burst open, the lock splintering, and Marcus stormed in. He wasn't the polished executive. His hair was wild, uncombed. He was wearing the clothes from yesterday, now rumpled, and his eyes were bloodshot, wide with a potent mixture of terror and pure, unadulterated rage. "What the hell are you doing with him?" he roared, his voice echoing in the large room. He slammed the door shut behind him. "Where is he, Vance?" He looked around wildly, expecting to find Julian. He saw only me, sitting calmly at the desk, a coffee cup in my hand. "Are you trying to blackmail me?" he spat, advancing on me. "You and that snake, is that it? You think you can get money out of me?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. The heat was a small, grounding pain. I looked at him, not at the man I married, but at the rabid animal he'd become. "You left me in the rain," I said. "Oh, stop it!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "Stop with the rain. I was busy. I had a work crisis. And you couldn't wait. Could you? You ran straight to Julian Vance the first chance you got. You traitorous, ungrateful bitch." He was panting, his face a mottled red. I just watched him. "I'm not ungrateful," I said. I reached to my side and picked up a thin folder, the one Anna Ruiz's associate had dropped off 20 minutes ago. I slid it across the polished surface of the desk. It stopped just short of his hand. He looked down at it. "What's this?" "Those are divorce papers," I said. He stared at the folder, then threw his head back and laughed. It was a high, thin, terrible sound. "Divorce fine, that's fine, you'll get nothing. Do you hear me? Not one single cent. I'll see you on the street, right back where I found you." "I don't want your money," I said. My voice was as flat as the skyline. "I want the $50,000 you stole from our joint account back. And I want you to know," I added, glancing at the clock on the wall, "that Mrs. Harding is waiting for you at Nexus. She's been there since 6:30, with her entire legal team." The color drained from his face. The laughter died instantly. He took a step forward, his mask of rage slipping to reveal the raw panic beneath. "What? What did you say?" I said, "Mrs. Harding is waiting for you. They're having a big meeting. About Project Aegis. About Zurich." He didn't just move. He lunged. He crossed the space between us in a second, his hands grabbing my shoulders, his fingers digging into my collarbone, shaking me. "What did you do?" he snarled, his face inches from mine, his breath hot and sour. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry out. I just looked into his panicked eyes. "I told them," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I told them everything." His grip loosened. He stumbled back, a hand to his mouth, and that terrible laugh returned. It was manic now, unhinged. You told them. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're a hysterical, emotional woman. It's your word against mine. Ilara, you have no proof. You have nothing." I picked up my coffee cup, my hand perfectly steady. "Oh, I do," I said, and a small, cold smile touched my lips. "But I'm not the one who gave it to them." I watched his face as the lie landed, a perfectly aimed, poisoned dart. "Julian is," I said. "He's the one who copied your personal drive last night while you were busy with Valerie. He has everything, and he's been in that meeting with Harding for the last 30 minutes. Your arch nemesis, Marcus, the man you've been so terrified of, he's the one who saved the company. He's the one who gets to burn you to the ground." He left the hotel suite. He didn't just walk out, he fled, a man running toward his own execution, his footsteps pounding down the hallway. The scene, as Julian described it to me later, was a masterpiece of corporate destruction. It was 7:30 in the morning. Marcus burst through the heavy glass doors of the 40th floor boardroom. He'd composed himself, fixed his hair, put on his armor of arrogance. He was ready to deny, to lie, to accuse Julian of a desperate, jealous coup. He stopped dead. It wasn't just Mrs. Harding, a woman who looked like she was carved from glacial ice. It was the entire senior legal team. And at the head of the long, polished table, perfectly calm, sat Julian Vance. "Marcus," Mrs. Harding said, her voice quiet. "You're late." "Ma'am, I can explain." Marcus blustered, pointing a shaking finger at Julian. "He's lying. This is a fabrication. He's been trying to sabotage me for years." Julian didn't say a word. He didn't even look at Marcus. He simply reached down, picked up the small, black hard drive, and plugged it into the port on the table. The 80-inch screen on the wall, usually reserved for quarterly projections, lit up. There was no presentation. There was just raw data. The Val folder, the emails, graphic and intimate, the chat logs, promising a future. Then, the Cayman folder, the bank statements, the wire transfer receipts, one after another, a cascade of stolen money. My money. Marcus's face, which had been red with bluster, was now a waxy, pale white. "And finally," Julian said, his voice the first one to break the silence as he clicked on the last file, "the Zurich plan." The memo appeared, the double cross, the plan to frame Julian, the 5-fold payout. The entire sociopathic architecture of his treason was laid bare for everyone to see. A junior lawyer gasped. Marcus made a sound, a low, choking noise, and seemed to shrink, collapsing in on himself. Mrs. Harding stood up. She didn't look at the screen. She looked only at Marcus, her eyes filled with a pure, cold contempt. "Security," she said, pressing a button on the conference phone. "Escort Mr. Marcus from the boardroom. He is not to touch his desk. He is not to speak to any staff. His access is terminated." She looked at the head of legal. "The FBI will be here in 1 hour." At that exact same moment, across town, I was in an office that was the polar opposite of that boardroom. Anna Ruiz's office was all warm woods, soft lighting, and shelves of thick books. It was a place of quiet, methodical power. I was signing my name, over and over. Ilara, Ilara, Ilara. Each signature felt like I was carving a piece of him out of me. Anna was on the phone, her voice a smooth, calm murmur. "Yes, that's the one. Execute it now." She hung up and turned to me, a small, professional smile on her face. "The petition is filed. The emergency injunction is in place. As of 8:01 this morning, the Cayman account is frozen." A wave of relief, so profound it was almost dizzying, washed over me. It was done. And then, my phone, which I'd retrieved from my dead car an hour ago and plugged in at Anna's office, chimed on the desk. It was an email. The name on the screen was a ghost from my past Ben, my old startup partner. The friend Marcus had so successfully and surgically removed from my life. The subject line was simple. "Heard the news." I opened it. "Ilara," it read, "I heard a rumor you and Marcus were splitting. I hope you're okay. Listen, this is going to sound crazy, but for years I've been haunted by what happened to us, our business. It never made sense." My hand was trembling. "I've been doing some private cybersecurity work." The email continued. "I have access to tools I didn't have back then. On a hunch, I spent the last few months digging into the server logs from our final funding week, the one that crashed everything. I found it. Ilara. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a random attack. It was a targeted, sophisticated 3-day-long DDoS attack, routed through a shell service in Eastern Europe. It was designed to look like a simple failure, but it was an assassination." My blood turned to ice. "The payment for the service," he wrote, "was made in an anonymous cryptocurrency. But I'm good at this. I traced it. It took me 3 months, but I found the original bank transfer that funded the crypto wallet." At the bottom of the email was an attachment, a single file, A bank statement from 5 years ago. It wasn't an anonymous account. It was a small personal savings account from a credit union I didn't recognize. But I recognized the name on the statement. Marcus. The attack that destroyed my company, my confidence, my entire life, had been funded by him. He hadn't rescued me from my lowest point. He hadn't found me in the wreckage. He had built the bomb. He had lit the fuse. He had stood by, waiting to play the savior, all to make me so broken and so dependent that I would never, ever question him. My failure wasn't his opportunity. It was his design. I stood just inside the massive revolving glass doors of the Nexus Tower lobby. It was a cathedral of brushed steel and gray marble, buzzing with the quiet energy of a morning commute. It was 8:45. I was dry. I was calm. I held my folded umbrella in my hand like a cane. The elevator bank chimed. The center doors slid open. There he was. Marcus was not walking. He was being propelled, held firmly by the upper arms by two large, uniformed security guards. His suit, the expensive one he loved, was rumpled. His tie was gone. His face, which I had last seen contorted in rage, was now a sickly, pale gray. His eyes were wide, darting around the lobby in a desperate, animal panic. He looked hollowed out. He saw me. His frantic gaze locked onto mine, and in that instant, all his terror, all his humiliation, found a target. It coalesced into pure, familiar rage. "You," he roared, his voice cracking, echoing off the marble walls. He lunged against the guard's grip, a puppet fighting its strings. "You did this, you bitch. You ruined me." The quiet lobby chatter stopped. Everyone turned to stare. I took 3 slow, deliberate steps toward him. I stopped just out of his reach. "No, Marcus," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through his hysteria like a surgeon's blade. "You ruined yourself." "You did it the moment you read my text message at 10:45 p.m. and chose to leave me standing in the rain." His face twisted, the logic of my words incomprehensible to him. All he had left was bluster. "You'll get nothing," he spat, his voice thick. "You hear me? You'll never win the divorce. I will fight you. I will drag this out for years until you have nothing." "Oh, we're not just getting a divorce," I said, just as 2 men in dark, professional suits walked briskly through the doors behind me. They didn't look at the guards. They looked straight at Marcus. I turned to them, ignoring my husband. I held up my phone, the screen already unlocked, displaying the email from Ben. "Agents," I said, my voice steady. "My name is Alara. This is for you." The lead agent, a tall man with tired eyes, took the phone from my hand. "It's proof of digital sabotage and wire fraud," I explained. "From 5 years ago. It seems corporate espionage wasn't his first major crime. He's the one who destroyed my first company. He's the architect of the failure he saved me from." The agent read the screen, his expression hardening. He looked up at Marcus with a new, professional interest. Marcus stared at the phone in the agent's hand. He stared at me, and in that second, he finally, truly understood. He saw the full, bottomless scope of his failure. I hadn't just exposed his present, I had excavated his past. Every escape route was blocked. He was done. "No," he whispered. It was a pathetic, crumbling sound. As the agents stepped forward, one of them pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt, Marcus's last thread of composure snapped. He became a cornered animal. "Valerie," he screamed, his voice pitching high and thin. He thrashed against the guards. "What about Valerie? She's in on it. She has the drive. Arrest her arrest. Valerie, she's the one." A quiet voice spoke from just behind my shoulder. "Valerie." Julian Vance stepped out from beside me. He was immaculate, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, his gaze resting on Marcus with an expression of almost bored disinterest. Valerie cut an immunity deal at 4 this morning, Julian said, his voice casual, as if discussing the weather. The second she realized Nexus was on fire, she saved herself. She handed over the USB, every email, and every secret audio recording she ever made of you. All of it, in exchange for saving Optima Dynamics from prosecution. He took a step closer, lowering his voice for Marcus alone. She's a shark. Marcus. You were just the pawn. The sound that ripped out of Marcus's throat was inhuman, a howl of such profound, absolute betrayal that it chilled the air. The agents didn't hesitate. They secured his hands behind his back. He was still screaming, a raw, broken litany of names. Valerie, Julian, me, as they dragged him across the marble floor and out into the waiting, gray morning. The lobby fell silent. Julian looked at me. He didn't smile. He just nodded once, a quick, sharp gesture of respect. Then he turned, straightened his cuffs, and walked back toward the elevators, a king reclaiming his castle. I stood there for a moment, the silence of the lobby settling around me. I looked out the glass doors. The sky was heavy. It was, of course, still raining. I walked to the entrance. The doors slid open, and the sound of the city, wet and alive, rushed in. I pressed the button on my umbrella, and it opened with a satisfying thwump. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, leaving the wreckage of my old life, and the man still screaming in the back of a federal car, behind me. I walked down the clean, rain-washed path, and I did not even once, look back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are listening from, so please drop your city or country in the comments below. Let's connect and share our thoughts. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us some extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.